southeast of England has a history of human occupation stretching back at least 250,000 years. With the establishment of London in Roman settlement times, this area of coastline has since formed the front line of defence from European invasion. The importance of the Thames for access to London, the use of the Medway estuary from early post-medieval times as a naval anchorage, and the rise of Chatham as a naval dockyard resulted in a demand for military defence systems to protect from foreign attack and invasion. During the reign of Napoleon, France was leading the world in the development of heavily armoured military ships. As a result, the perceived vulnerability of the southeast of England became of paramount concern to the government. In 1860, a commissioner's report, headed by Sir Harry D. Jones, on the land defences of the Thames and Medway rivers was issued. The shocking findings of the report meant that its recommendations for increased defences in and around the Thames and Medway estuaries were to be implemented immediately. Along the Thames, this led to the enlargement of 3 existing forts and the building of 4 new emplacements. 3 of these, Shawmead Fort, Coalhouse Fort and Cliffe Fort, formed a network to defend the last meander in the river. Their combined firing arc made the Thames inaccessible to any enemy ships. Shawmead Fort was completed in 1876 on the site of a previous battery. The schematic plan, bottom left, shows the classic layout of gun emplacements, or casemates, fronting the river, with the less substantially constructed barracks and ancillary accommodation sited behind for protection. Shawmead Fort is notable due to the fact it was used for demolition training by the Royal Engineers in the 1960s. The right-hand photo shows the extent of the remaining structure. The semi-demolished casemates give a unique dissected view of land defence construction techniques at their prime, showing the innovative use of layered granite, timber and iron for blast protection. Coalhouse Fort is sited on the Essex side of the Thames, opposite Cliffe Fort. Looking at the schematic plan, you can see how the casemates follow the curve of the river. During the 1980s, the lease was handed over to a group of enthusiasts who maintain and run the fort as a small-scale museum, and as a result, it is in the best condition of the 3 today. So features such as the earthworks, which were added to camouflage the forts from attack by improved long-ranged artillery, are still intact. Cliffe Fort sits opposite Coalhouse Fort, forming the final point in the defensive triangle. The closest development is the village of Cliffe, about 2 miles to the east. With the exception of the old centre of the village, most of Cliffe consists of post-war ribbon development along the A Road towards the Medway towns. The only land access to the fort is along a dead straight, mile-long concrete service road. This is presently owned by Brett Aggregates, whose dredger offloads at the jetty adjacent to the fort. A conveyor which runs the length of the track takes the aggregates to the works. These are sited between the fort and the village. Evidence of their previous extraction activities take the form of 3 flooded quarries, whose visual impact is accentuated by the surrounding farm and marshland. The fort itself was built in 1876. Its layout shares the common themes of the previous 2 examples, built around a parade ground with ancillary blocks situated furthest away from the vulnerable riverside face, which houses the armaments. So, looking at Cliffe Fort as existing in more detail, the long approach road becomes more dominant in the landscape, and it becomes clear that the exposed nature of the track had defensive advantages. It's probably visible in this view that the construction of the barrack block varies from the more massive structure of the casemates. Note also the jetty serving the conveyor and the yachting club who use the flooded quarry in the foreground. As no archived drawings of the fort could be located, both photographic and measured surveys of the existing structure were undertaken for the purpose of this design thesis. There are 3 principal levels: the ground floor, housing powder and shell stores, mess and offices. The first floor, consisting of the casemates and barracks, and the roof. This composited aerial photograph, taken from a radio-controlled aircraft, clearly shows how the structure is suffering from advantageous vegetation growth and waterlogging, both of which are exacerbating the subsidence which hounded the project from its outset. This led to a final cost of construction totalling £171,000, exceeding the original budget by £100,000. The fort was eventually vacated circa 1946 and now stands empty.